Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about 10 Pound Poms Season 2. So, Season 2 came out in 2025, and it happens to be the last season of the series. The series came out in 2023. I reviewed the show, I believe, maybe last year or early last year or something like that. And I'll say this again, I am shocked and surprised by how much I learned about Australia in the 1960s and stuff. Because I never knew how prejudiced and racist it was. Prejudiced and racist towards the people of Britain and to the Aborigine people and stuff. And that's because I'm an American, you know? And over here, we don't never hear nothing, and I mean nothing, about Australia. Basically, we just know like the gist of they call it the land down under, the Great Barrier Reef, kangaroos and stuff like that, the crocodile hunter, and how Britain sent its prisoners over there many centuries ago. And so that's really the only thing we know about it. Like we don't know nothing about like the people, this and that. But for myself, I was lucky enough to find out just a teeny tiny bit more when I was a teenager growing up in like the 90s because of this animal show called Kratts Creatures. And when they visited Australia, they met some Aborigine people and they started playing their musical instrument. Now, the Aborigine people who was on the show, they dressed like very, very ancient Aborigine people. And I remember thinking to myself, why are these people dressed like they're in like the jungle or like they're from ancient times? Like I didn't understand that growing up, you know? And plus I had no idea what an Aborigine person was. Then when I was in college in the early 2000s, I used to talk to this one woman on MySpace from Australia. And we were pretty good friends. She sent me like a boomerang and stuff like that. And some Vegemite, which she told me to eat it on bread, but she told me that after I threw it away. I put some on my finger, licked it, threw it away. But I wish I would have put it on bread. But anyway, she's white and she loves black dudes, right? And so I'm all like, well, don't y'all have black folks over there in Australia? Me not knowing nothing about Australia. And she like, we do have black people over here, but a lot of them are mixed with Aborigine. And I didn't pick up on that at the time. But now, after watching this show and seeing how racist white people were back in the day, and probably still to this day, most likely, because she loves black dudes so much, she either wanted a black person who's not mixed and like pure, or she just doesn't like Aborigine people, which after watching this show is probably more B than it is A. And so, but I don't talk to her no more. But anyway, so like we've been lost contact. Like remember we lost contact sometime in 2004, when we started talking around 2001, 2002. And then we reconnected around the 2010s or something like that when I was been out of college. But then we had like a falling out and we just don't talk no more. But I still got that boomerang though. But anyway, so like yeah, I'm just so shocked and surprised about like the racism and stuff like that. But I shouldn't be too shocked and surprised because pretty much any country that has a white colonization in it tends to be racist and stuff like that. Whether it was like India, North American continent of America and Canada, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and places like that. So yeah, I shouldn't be too surprised. And it's kind of crazy. It's like with all that colonization and stuff, how when they first went to these countries, they was a little bit more tolerable. Then they became racist, crazy. Then they became tolerable again around the same time. Then they went crazy racist around the same time. And then they started being normal around the same time. But a couple of the races still linger on. It's just crazy because at some point in time in like say like America and like Canada, Britain, no, well, at least America, not Canada, but America, we stopped following like British rule and everything. Canada, then it took them a long time to stop. But like, and of course, like, Britain people own a part of China and India, which they no longer do. And yeah, it's just so crazy how they treated people back in those days. And watching this show is a huge eye opener and stuff. And I recommend many people should watch this show. If you're out of the United States, not wait, I messed that up. If you're out of like Australia and stuff or Europe, watch it on BritBox. And that's how I watch this show. The show was created by Danny Brockenhurst. And from what I found out about him, he tends to be a person who hates fascism, which is probably explains why he created this show. To show a dark time in like his people's like, history. Because he is English and everything. And it's crazy how like white New Zealanders, Australians, and stuff like and Americans and Canadians and South Africans, they're technically British in a way. You know what I'm saying? Like from Europe and stuff, from their ancestors and stuff. But it's just crazy how the Australian people treated the British people and stuff. But even more importantly, how they treated like the Aborigine people, the First Nation. They're the indigenous people of Australia. And the way they treated the Aborigine people is exactly similar to how they treated Native Americans and black people over here in America. And the first season has so many viewers and stuff just like overnight that I got greenlit for a second season. So when I first started watching this show, I was shocked and surprised to see it got canceled after 2 seasons. I'm like, what the heck happened in that second season? Did somebody get like offended or something like that? Did they start feeling guilty because of their ancestors or something? Most likely, probably. You know how it goes and stuff like that. I mean, you've seen those YouTubers from like, all talking about like, wokeness this and making us feel guilty and all this other crap. But season 2 slightly shifts tone. It has more of a soap opera type feel. There's just all this romance and love triangles and stuff going on. I'm all like, I don't need to see this. I didn't sign up for a soap. I signed up to watch like prejudice and like hatred towards people and stuff and learn about like another country during a time that was really hateful and stuff. I know that sounds weird. I'm watching this show for like the prejudice and the hatred because I want to learn. I want to learn what happened in this other country that is similar to that of my country and stuff. And I want to stop having like, this fake persona of like a country that I know nothing about, and I want to learn about its history. And that's what's so great about this show is the historical factor of it and stuff. Like, it doesn't just talk about like racism and stuff like that and oppression and prejudice. Like, my God, they were also treating like the women wrong and all kind of stuff, Like, women weren't allowed in bars during that time. Like, the Aborigine people lived on reservations and they had to work certain jobs and stuff like that. People did not wear two-piece bikinis at the beach, and if they did, it was considered scandalous and everything. And like if an underage child had, underage teenager had like a child, and especially if it's from like a person of color, it's considered illegitimate, and they will take it from them and put it in the adoption agency. Not only that, but that huge scandal with the Catholic Church, like taking all these like hundreds of thousands of British like children, putting them in the foster system over in Australia, and the Catholic Church and like immigration government people are making money off that, because here are these parents that badly want children, so they pay some good money to get like a child that's not theirs, and cut around all the red tape. And this was happening with like, and the British government knew about this, the Australian government knew about that, and of course the Catholic Church knew about it because they were the one doing this scheme along with immigration and stuff. And at first I'm thinking, okay, this is just like a storyline, but I'm like, wait, hold up. This footage, this black and white footage, this doesn't look like the black and white footage from the television show when they go from color to black and white. This is real actual footage, and those are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of little children and stuff. Like, people don't know who they are related to and stuff. Like, everybody just been put around places, and they were giving Christian names so that the parents could never find them and stuff. This actually happened in Australia and everything. And the Catholic Church was like, involved in this crowd, which, no offense to Catholic people, but I mean, come on. That whole thing, the 90s with like the male priests and those underage boys, I mean, anything's possible. I mean, heck, look over here in America. Like, the Catholic Church brainwashes people so much when it comes to politics, and have them like, supporting horrible people and turning their eye to that of like a pedophile list and everything. Or as they say in Europe, a pedophile list. I mean, it's disgusting just so they can push their agenda and everything. But I'm just so shocked and surprised. But then again, there are those two former like Power Ranger actresses who are both Australian, and one's Catholic. And yeah, if you only knew the things that I knew that I'm not allowed to say, because I promised this other celebrity I wouldn't say nothing, yeah, you wouldn't be too surprised and everything. But like I said before, this show is very historical and everything. And like, I really urge people to watch this show. But it just sucks that in season 2 they went with all these weird, unnecessary storylines that just came completely out of nowhere. Like all these romance storylines, like almost no character this season or in this show is a good person. They all have a little bit of scumminess to them in some kind of way. Infidelity, what is it? Like working for like a rich, almost like mobster type person. Cheating, which of course infidelity and stuff like that. Lying about being pregnant and everything just so you can keep somebody, kidnapping your own child and everything. Like, it's just, and then using somebody to get information just so you can get your child. It's just like there's so many bad characters in like this show. But then it's like there's this one romance. There's two. Yeah, there's like two romance storylines that come completely out of nowhere. And one of them, like when you see this person in season 1, there's no evidence that this person is like this way. And so like, why write this person like this? Why not write like another person or somebody who's barely on the show? Because this person, like, it came completely out of nowhere and stuff. And so the viewership started to drop. Now, I did look and see who wrote this show. Each season has like a co-writer. And this one co-writer writes like almost every episode in both seasons, but the other co-writer they switched in. So there's like a total of three writers. Apparently this new co-writer must have been all about the romance or something, because this show really did change and stuff. And as for like the prejudice and the oppression and the racism and stuff, it's still there, but it takes a significant sideline and everything. It's almost not present in the show, like with Patty's baby. She has a mixed white and black child, and she's a teenager. People were up in arms about that in season one when the baby came out. But now in season two, nobody, and I mean pretty much nobody cares about it. They look at the baby, they can tell it's mixed, but they just don't care. And this is not how Australia was in the 1960s and stuff. There's only one person who has a problem with it, but it's only the equivalent of just a few minutes in one episode, and it's never really resolved because this person's written off the show after that. And like it kind of gets brought up in the last episode, kinda, but nobody really cares about it. The racism and prejudice of like the Aborigine people, it's still there, but it's mostly relegated to like an episode and like a half, and you do see the brutality of it and the protests and stuff. But the problem with these racist storylines in season two and all these romance storylines in season two is that they haven't been built up properly. They just kind of come out of nowhere and everything. Kind of like this one gay relationship that came out of nowhere. It's just like, where's the build up? It's just all of a sudden it's there, and then it disappears for like the rest of the season, then pops back up again. And it hasn't been properly built up episode by episode by episode. That really would have had a bigger impact and everything. But for somebody like myself who's trying to learn and everything, to me, it just feels crammed into like a 6 episode season where you barely spend a full episode on it. And it's weird because in season one, once again, it's 6 episodes, but it feels like there's a lot going on in season one as opposed to season two. In season two, it feels like nothing's going on and everything's just revolving around this one family, but like nothing's really happening. Like that one lady who had like a affair with JJ in season one, she's now in a mental hospital, and that storyline gets rushed so quickly. It feels very non-existent. Like, her husband doesn't want nobody visiting her. He knows JJ's visiting him, and there's really no resolve of that until JJ breaks her out, and then once again there's no resolve of that. But then she gets sent right back at the last episode because it just kind of came out of nowhere, and it's just kind of like there's no build up, there's no resolution, there's like nothing in everything. And I really hate that because this is a really good show. And as for like the little brother on the show, because so many years have passed since the writing of like the first season and stuff, Peter, like he grew so much. He basically pulled a Netflix Aang from Netflix's Avatar: The Last Airbender. The dude grew up so high. In season one, Peter barely had a storyline, but he had a little bit of a storyline. Season two is just completely different now. In season one, like, he didn't want to go to school because he wanted to play around with his bird. The teacher didn't like that. He kind of ran away a little bit. He started playing with some Aborigine kids. I thought that was going to go somewhere, especially with all the hatred and the prejudice and stuff. But that went completely nowhere in season one. And it's non-existent in season two. In season two, he's just pretty much like falling in love with this girl and hanging out with JJ and trying to get this girl to like him, and he doesn't hang out with no Aborigine kids. Where are the Aborigine kids from season one? They're gone. You don't see them whatsoever. Three cast members from season one get completely written off in season two. And it's just like, what happened to these people? What happened to that really racist man? What happened to that one Aborigine woman? And what happened to I think her name might be Kate. Like what happened to her fiance at the end of season one and stuff, you know? It just they get completely written off before the season even starts. And it's just weird. Like even Terry and Ron, they barely interact this season, and they had a lot to do in the first season. And so everything just feels disconjointed. Everything feels rushed. Everything's a romantic storyline where it's kind of like somebody it looks like they're gonna cheat, and then you find out somebody did cheat it before the events of season one, and it's just kind of like, why are you tearing this character down? Why is there so much infidelity going on here, especially with characters people like? Like, why write this? You know? And I just have no idea why. But it cost them their show, and now sadly it's like over with. And it's such a shame. This was a good show. It's not on the level of Call the Midwife, but just like with Call the Midwife, you learn a lot about that era in time, that decade in time. That is similar to a decade in my country, but vastly different to some degree and everything. And the show was really building something historically, a learning lesson when it comes to the Aborigine people and what they lost and what they're trying to fight to get back and everything. But once again, it's only relegated to only a couple of minutes per like episode and not that many episodes and stuff, especially with the protest. I'm like, what are they talking about? I don't know what the world they're talking about. Like, this is a historical event. Like, what's going on? Like, you know what I'm saying? And so I had to do a little research, like on Google and everything. And because I remember, I think Ron, I believe his name is, he was talking about, like, you know, this one Irish woman, her whole family, this Irish lady, her whole family is just there to cause like romantic chaos. That's all they're there for. And so I knew after like their second encounter, I knew something was going to happen between him and her. I just had a feeling and everything because they only interact with each other in the show. And so she's working with him, wanting to be his new partner because Terry just left and not really helping out. Terry has a very strange storyline this season. And so she asked him plain and simple, what would happen if somebody caught like you and me just hanging out, working together? They weren't even doing anything. They were just like building up on restoring a place. And I was very shocked by some of the stuff that he said that would happen to him just for them hanging out. But of course, he got caught like dancing with her, and his people wasn't happy. And then he gets like treated badly by like the police officers. And then there's like the protest, and it's just like I'll get into that a little bit more later. But I was just very shocked like to hear some of this stuff, you know. And then when I researched some stuff, it's just kind of like that's like nuts. Like it just took a decade later for things to get somewhat better and everything. And you know, back to like the racism from like colonized white countries and stuff like that. And I will say yes. Sometimes it doesn't always look like that, but things have gotten a heck of a lot better than what it was like 60 years ago and hundreds of years ago. But there is still room for improvement. Like there's still prejudice, there's still hatred, there's still racism and stuff going on in all these countries. Heck, especially mine's right now. And to something I never thought I would ever see, because I didn't grow up in this type of like environment and everything. This is just completely new to me. And like when I watch like television shows, 'cause I love period pieces. And of course, if you're over here in America, a lot of period pieces are mostly British period pieces, you know what I'm saying? And so like as I'm watching these shows and as I have like BritBox and I'm watching other like Australian shows, New Zealand shows, Britain shows, and things like that, I've noticed something, especially on BritBox. Now, BritBox does not have every British show. They just don't. And it's a lot of dramas, a lot of cop dramas, a lot of dramas, romance dramas, a couple of comedies here and there. And I noticed something on BritBox. There's nothing but predominantly white television shows from like decades and decades and decades, even in some of the newer stuff. Now, you will see that lonely person of color in these shows and everything. Sometimes they'll be the lead, sometimes they'll be the co lead, and sometimes they'll just be a co star. But one thing I've noticed is whenever they do have a person of color, they do tend to exclude all the other races. So what I mean by that, of course, like I say, the show's all white and they have like a Pakistani person on the show. They'll have that race, but no other person of color. Or if they will have like say a black person on the show, then there's no other people of color other than those black people and stuff. And it's very few when it comes to color of people. Now I have noticed because of course, I don't know when this started in Europe, but over here in America, we have a thing called like woke Hollywood, and they were starting to have more inclusion and DEI and this and that. And so we started seeing more people of color and women and LGBT in television shows and movies. I've noticed this happened around the same time as well in like European television shows, but there are still very, very few. And I remember there's this one show one day I am going to talk about because I really want to talk about it. It's called No Offense, and it's a British cop show. And there's like no black people whatsoever as a main character on this show, except for when the second season comes, but they're just a recurring mobster family. And the lead actress of that black lady, she said, whenever she does like all these other shows and movies, interviewers will never ask her no questions. They'll ask her white co-stars, but they won't ask her, which is very shocking. I also said how I never really see any Asian people in these European television shows. And I remember like I never see no black people in like Irish shows and stuff. And I asked this one actress from Called the Midwife who's Irish. I asked her, just plain and simple, because I just didn't know. Like, I asked her, are there, like, any black people in Ireland? She's like, well, yeah, of course. I was like, why did they come out? I never seen none of no television shows or movies. And she said, plain and simple, yeah, we're still working on that. And we need to do better and everything. And it's kind of like Asian people. Like, okay, one thing about this show I noticed, the only people of color are the Aborigine people. I'm just like, well, where the heck are all the black people and Asian people and like Pacific Islander people? Like, where are they at during this period in time in Australia? Because you don't see them whatsoever on the show. And so I had to look it up. Like, when did black people migrate to like Australia? When did Asian people come? And stuff like that. And back during the 1800s of like the gold rush era, there were tons of Asian people coming in. But then at some point in time, white people really got racist and they started banning other people from countries coming in. So a lot of Asian people's population died out. But then they stopped all that crap around the 1970s or so. And then the population of Asian people picked back up. And so I'm just like, holy crap, I didn't know that either. And I'm just like, well, heck, if there were still some Asian people living there, where are they in this show? Where are the black people in this show and stuff? because they did exist during this time, and like the show is set in and everything, but yet they're nowhere to be like found. Because like when this whole Australian scheme came with the whole 10-pound palm thing, it wasn't just the British people who were affected by this. The Irish were affected by this. The Italians and stuff. New Zealand had a similar scheme. And so like watching season one, I'm like, where are the Irish and where are like the Italians? And it's like, oh, okay, there's an Italian person, but they only had like one speaking role and they were like a background character, and they don't show up in season two. So season two tried to rectify this by having a Irish family but come in and just be like the love triangle type stuff. And as for the Italian people, they showed up for all of one episode just to get evicted from their place and get treated badly, and then that's it. So while this show is not perfect and everything with a realistic representation of it, it's close enough, but they could have done more. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so character bios. I'll start with the Raleigh family. They are Irish and brand new to the series, and they live in the hostel. And so when it comes to that of Birdie, she is a teenager who Peter has a huge crush on. JJ pretty much tries to help him like win her over by saying, like a woman likes a man who can throw a ball, can sweat, can surf, this and that. So he's trying to teach him like, to get her affection. But when things like that kind of doesn't really work, then JJ lies and is all like, Peter stole some beers. I caught you drinking them. And then Birdie's all like, well, next time you steal some beers, let me have some and stuff, And so so in a way, she like, acknowledges him, but nothing ever comes between those two. Now, she is friends with Patty, and that's basically about it. She really doesn't have like a character arc. Ray. I'm not sure if that's Birdie's like, brother or cousin or whatever, but they're related. And so in the beginning couple of episodes, he's constantly giving people like a business card, but I'm not sure of what kind of business. And then all of a sudden, like he starts to like hit on Bill and everything. When they was having a drink together and talking, he placed his hand like on Bill's thigh, which causes Bill to freak out and run out the building and stuff. Then next thing you know, they're hanging out again, and he's all like, you're feeling this, I'm feeling this, we're the only people in this room, so let's just go at it. And then all of a sudden, him and Bill start to go at it like wild animals and stuff. And I'm all like, holy crap, Bill is gay. And so then they get caught and he gets pissed and he leaves the room. And then that's the end of him. Once again, no story arc. This whole family has been just reduced to like romantic storylines. Maggie. By the way, their last name is Skinner, not Raleigh. I got them confused with a different family last name. But yeah, she is the head of the family. And so when she's in one of the buildings in the hostel, she finds the deed to that beach house that Terry and Ron was fixing up for that one guy that died. So she sees this as an opportunity for her family to like get ahead in life while they're in Australia, because they're from like Ireland and stuff. And so when she goes to that beach house and she tells them, hey, this is our new future and this and that, she sees Ron and a group of Aborigine people sneak on out of there. So she goes there the next day and tells Ron that, hey, this is my husband's place and he left me the deed and this and that, which never happened. Yes, she did have a husband, and yes, he did die. And they had a funeral service for them, but it wasn't the guy who died last season. So Ron goes to the hostel under disguise and talks to Terry because, of course, he can't be seen there because he's Aborigine, and tells him to check in on this woman and see if what she's saying is true. When Ron finds that out, he lets the woman know that, hey, you lied to me, and I'm a business partner with that dude who died, and like Terry, there's gonna be like a fish and chip place. But she pretty much asks, can she be a part of that and everything? And she didn't want to lie, but it's just she's trying to get like ahead in life. So they end up like becoming business partners and fixing the place up together. While they're fixing the place up together, they're having a good old time listening to music. And she basically asks him, plain and simple, because remember, she's from Ireland, not Australia. So this is like the first time she saw like an Aborigine person. But she knows that they're hated amongst like white people and stuff, and she asked them plain and simple, what would happen to you if they caught us just here together working and everything? And he tells her amongst his people he will be known as a traitor, he'll lose his leader status, some type of visa, something, and some other stuff. I knew exactly what was happening with these two by like the third episode when she gave him the look. I knew they were going to have some kind of romantic something or another. And they do. So they're dancing and everything, they're colluding and their stuff, and then this one character, Ron's cousin, catches them. But she doesn't expose him to like, his people and stuff. But she does get on him about that because, Ron has always liked things that white people have liked. Their beer, their food, and stuff like that. But of course, he can never be seen eating or drinking that. But then she sees a protest going on with the Aborigine people talking about they want their land back and this and that. And then Ron gets beat by like the police and she tries to stop it. She goes to the police station and everything and tells them to let him go and everything, but they refuse. After that, she sees Ron again and find out because he got arrested during that protest, he lost a lot of his privileges in town and stuff. Like he can only work in certain areas now. He can't be seen here and there, and this is gonna have to be the end of like their partnership and stuff. They kiss and everything and go their separate ways. My only problem with this relationship, it came completely out of nowhere and it was built up extremely slow. It should have been built up a heck of a lot faster. I would have preferred if it was an Australian woman, so she'll know exactly what an Aborigine person was, and talking about, oh, this is like forbidden, but she can't help it. And for them to talk out their feelings and stuff, why they like each other, why they're attracted to each other. And you get none of this in the show, it just kind of happens. And so it's hard to feel something and have this be a cultural impact because of the simple fact it was built out of completely nowhere with no groundwork and stuff. And so I was curious to know, about interracial dating in Australia and stuff like that when it comes to Aborigine people. Now, from what I found out, apparently interracial relationships and marriages happen almost like instantly when white people settled in like Australia and stuff. There were like interracial marriages between whites and Aborigine people, this and that. At some point in time, it became taboo once white people became extremely racist and stuff. And then it became like banned. And it started to become like very forbidden around like the early 1900s and stuff. But around the 1970s, when a lot of stuff started to change in Australia, interracial marriage was one of those things as well. And Aborigine people and white people were allowed then to like start marrying stuff, along with like, the two-piece bikini, Chinese people coming back into the country, and women being allowed in bars. Peter's given a completely different story arc this entire season. No longer is he scared to go to school because, his teacher won't let him play with that bird. No longer do you see him playing with Aborigine kids. But in the beginning, we do see him getting bullied by his peers and stuff. And he tells his parents that his teacher is even harder on him and stuff because, he is a foreigner from like England. And when he's giving the presentation, a young boy is holding up a pomegranate. And as, Peter's giving his presentation, he screams at the boy and tells him he is not a pomegranate because, they call them poms and stuff. But that's really as far as the racial profiling goes for people in England, just like that first episode, and that's it. And so we still see him being very helpful around like his home, him helping his sister with like the baby and everything. Sometimes she puts the baby on him for him to babysit so she can have a normal life and everything. Other than that, like he will even stand up to like grown men when the men tried to take the baby and stuff. But primarily this season, he just hung out a lot with that of JJ. Because like I said before, JJ took him under his wing and tried to teach him how to be a man. This, you can see, irritates that of Terry. But Terry doesn't do nothing about it. Terry just goes and play house with another family that is not his. And so Peter has like affection for that of like Birdie and stuff, even though she's much older than him. Now, Peter has grown a lot since the first season because it took so long for the second season to come out. And, it's cool to see JJ kind of like, help out that of like Peter by teaching him how to like, play sports and like fix up like a place and surf and everything because it gives JJ something to do because of the whole Sheila situation from last season. But I would have loved to see Terry get like, very irritated and in JJ's face being like, why are you teaching my son how to do this? I'm his father. I can teach him how to do this. Only for JJ to be like, well, where are you at? You're too busy off playing house to another family. But we get no kind of conflict to that. Why set this up and why have Terry be irritated if they're not going to pay it off? JJ's mother, she's a lot less meaner than she was in season 1. She's no longer contradicting that of her son and pissing him off. But, she doesn't like it when the kids are playing like baseball and stuff like that because she said the ball can break a window. This causes the kids to steal a bunch of paint, some sheets, and write like, no fun allowed. And so because Patty was the one who orchestrated this, Patty turned herself in. They had a nice little heart to heart, and JJ's mom actually did something that completely surprised me. She told them if the kids like clean all this up and like the paint and stuff like that, then they can go back to having fun and playing baseball and stuff, and she will like allow it. I thought that was like really cool of her, because that's something she would have never done in the first season. Then, like when Children and Family came to take like Patty's daughter and stuff, she actually helped Patty out. She stalled them for as long as she could while JJ and the others got the baby out and stuff. But when it comes to Annie had a situation with a business partner of hers, and she straight up told Annie that this woman is not reliable and everything, which Andy defended her until Marlene proved to be unreliable and stuff. So Marlene was in season one. Not sure if I ever spoke about her, but she's the one who owns that women's shop and the one that Annie works at. Marlene's husband has left her, and in the divorce and everything, like he wants to be sold out of the business that they own, that women's shop and everything. And with the IRS coming to collect money, this and that, she needed to buy time. How does she do that? By throwing herself down some steps and hurting her ankle. This is a weird woman. Annie helps her get out the red when she finds out. But Annie found out that Marlene bought tons and tons and tons of two-piece bikinis, not knowing what they could do with them because something like that's not allowed to be worn. Annie decides, hey, we can sell these and women will wear them and we can help change, the system. So they make like a commercial, this and that, and business is booming. And so Marlene's going to have like a fashion show and stuff like that. And she invites Patty. Patty decides she's going to model in it. And she asks that Marlene to watch her baby Mary. Marlene does it, but steps away for a couple of minutes. And a group of women's all like, who baby is this? So they go out when Patty's giving her speech about how smart she is and this and that. And the baby started crying, and then Patty has to confess that's hers, takes the baby, runs out, and is completely embarrassed. And then Marlene invited Patty to some kind of lounge club where Patty started smoking pot and drinking and stuff like that. That pissed Annie off. Until where Annie literally tells her, JJ's mother was right. Mrs. Walker said, you're unreliable. And then that's the last we see of Marlene. No type of redemption, no, finding out what happens to, the business. She's not, apologizing to Patty, nothing. Stevie. This dude gets written off after 2 episodes in the beginning. And I was shocked because in the first season, he really made it a point to step up and be there for Patty. He crushed on her, he defended her honor against this boy who was making fun of her, and he was willing to marry her and be the father of her child, even though it's not his and the child's a completely different color. So this season, when she wants to have fun but can't because she has a baby, he's all like, oh, I'll watch her and stuff like that. So he starts to play house, which pisses his father off. He's all like, she's using you. That's not your child. People are going to talk because that's a baby of a different color and stuff. But no matter what, he stayed by her side and he decided, what, she can have fun. I'm not. I'm going to be responsible for this child who's not mine. Then she comes home one day because she started leaking and got embarrassed. And when she comes home, there's a bunch of powder on her child's face. Now, her child is half black. And she asks, what the heck is this crap? And he's all like, Comet. It will bleach your child's skin. I was shocked and surprised they went there in that storyline. And Patty was not having it. She's not ashamed for having a half-black child because she actually loved the father. And she basically tells him to get out. And he's all like, I did this for you. And she's like, no, you did it for yourself. Then the shocking thing happened. His father is just pissed off and starts packing all their bags. And he tells Stevie, get in this car. We are leaving and you're getting away from that girl. He doesn't want to go. And he's all like, look, I will leave you here. And so Patty just tells him, you know what, just go. Just be with your father, this and that. And he leaves and is never seen again. I was hoping for more of a fallout between those two. I mean, he tried to bleach her kid's skin. And the thing is, like I said before, nobody cares anymore if she has a half-black kid. And that's not the problem as to why she can't have fun. She can't have fun because she has a kid and she's a teenager. So he basically did it for himself and everything and stuff like that. And so when, he was like, his father wanted him to leave, and this, I wish Pat had been all like, look, it was nice that you stepped up to try to be a father, but what you did was low down, and I want nothing to do with you. I hope it was something like that, more than her being all like, look, you need to be with your family, just go with your father. And I was still shocked and surprised he tried to bleach that child's skin. Mandy, a completely new character that comes completely out of nowhere to cause conflict between that of Kate and Robbie. Basically, Robbie used her for sex a couple of months ago and didn't want nothing to do with her. So when she goes to his family's house to have dinner and everything, and she gets introduced to Kate, she lies to Kate and is all like, "I'm pregnant and I haven't told the father yet." When Kate is talking to Robbie, she's all like, "Oh yeah, that Mandy lady you're friends with, she's pregnant and hasn't told the father yet." And she had no idea that Robbie slept with her until Robbie told that of Kate. So Mandy's mother forces Robbie to cut off his engagement with Kate and marry the daughter. Until Kate discovers that she's wearing some type of maternity underwear, tampon, sanitary napkin thingy or whatever when the lady bent over. And she realized the woman lied about being pregnant so she can trap Robbie and everything. So on the day of the wedding, the moment Mandy's about to say "I do," Kate rushes in, tells the truth, and then Mandy tells the truth, and then Robbie leaves Mandy for that of Kate. There was really no need for this storyline, and it served absolutely no purpose to like the overall story other than making Robbie look like a user who would just use a woman for sex. They could have focused more on the whole Kate Michael situation, which they kind of abandoned after that whole news reporter thing, which I'll get into a little bit later. Benny. Benny is this new character who's like this rich tycoon mobster type guy that like Terry works for. And I can't believe it. He basically, what happened was he was trying to evict this Italian family. He had one of his goons with him. The husband attacked the goon, and Terry intervened. So he gives Terry like a job and has Terry do like goon work. So basically, he'll have Terry pick somebody up, take them there, watch this person, deliver a package, blackmail somebody. I could not believe it. When Terry starts to befriend this one lady named Christine, her family almost dies. And so Terry is starting to question the tactics of like Benny, to the point where he started calling Benny a liar when he asked him, "Has anybody ever died in your apartment?" And he denied it. So Terry calls him a liar over and over, which he tells Terry plain and simple, "Don't you call me no liar no more." I knew something was gonna happen because when they was driving in the car out in the middle of nowhere, he's listening to music and Terry turns the music off. Now, if you ever watched the first Rush Hour movie, James Carter tells Lee, "Don't you ever touch a black man's radio." Well, this man ain't black, but you still don't touch that radio. I knew something was going to go down. So he basically makes Terry get out the car and he drives off, only for Terry to be all like, "Hey man, you can't leave me out here." I'm like, dude, what did you think was going to happen? The man gave you a warning. The man is dangerous and he told you to get out the car. Did you really think he was going to give you a ride back home? And so he kind of disappears a little bit for the rest of the season, only until like he's at the hostel. Because that family that almost died, Terry let them stay at the hostel. And so he keeps telling this woman, "You pay me my rent." Terry intervened again and beat the snot out of him. Only for him to give basically that gangster warning and everything. And he got Terry back by getting his family. He didn't hurt the family physically, but he called children and family on Patty, saying she has an illegitimate child because it's a person of color and she's a teenager with a baby living in a hostel and can't take care of the baby. They come looking for Patty and the baby, and it causes some mess. To the point where Terry's all like, I have a way to get this man back. So him and Annie, they sneak into Benny's place of work. And Terry finds a bunch of document papers and a recording that he helped blackmail somebody with, the mayor of all people. And so he gives it to the mayor so the mayor can handle that of Benny. And, they also, with the help of Christine and Annie, they secretly record that of Benny confessing to some of his heinous acts of letting people live in condemned buildings and then covering up their murder. This is literally a soap opera and everything. Ronnie, I was surprised we got to see Ronnie this season. We only saw him for a little bit in season 1. He's the guy who ran into Kate, and she used him to get the immigration papers on her son. And so after that, we really just never saw him again. So just like they do with so many other characters this season, they basically somewhat assassinate that of his character. But not too much and everything. So basically, when Kate is arrested for kidnapping her son, he pretends to be her fiance to help get her out of jail. Originally, she doesn't want to do it, but eventually she does. Then him and her start hanging out, but he starts to develop feelings for her, which she does not have back, which breaks his heart, but he still invites her to meet his wealthy family. That was all it took for her to be all like, look at this house and look at all that money. So she agrees to marry him, only for Mandy to come in and mess everything up with the fake pregnancy. So it turns out, the part of how they assassinated his character, the fact that he did just use Mandy for sex and everything, which pisses Kate off when she also thinks that's his son. Talking about how can you do this and I was going to rebuild my life with you and blah, 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 blah. It's first of all, yes, using a person for sex is wrong, but he didn't know that he was a supposed father at that time. She has no business to get mad at him. But then, of course, like I said before, the pregnancy was fake and everything. Him and Kate end up at the end of the season where they kiss, and I guess they're going to start dating now. Bill, he's gay or bisexual, and I'm completely shocked and surprised by that. A little, because, okay, I do remember saying in season 1, episode 1, he was sneaking around with a guy, and I thought he might have been, secretly gay. But, it turns out he and that guy was working to steal money. All throughout season 1, though, you never get the impression he could be gay or whatever. And so for them to come up with this storyline is just kind of odd. And, I have nothing against an LGBT relationship, but at least give some kind of hints. And that's one problem I'm starting to have with modern television. When you see one season, say the first, and a person acts completely straight, but then by the next season, it's revealed that they're bisexual and everything. I've seen that done with 2 characters before from 2 other television shows. And it just kind of comes out of nowhere. And it's one of those things that really needs to develop a whole lot better and be built up. And so, So I already told you the thing with that one guy, and it turns out that Bill, with Ray, and Bill is like, bisexual or whatever. And when I say that just came completely out of nowhere, I mean that came just completely out of nowhere. And so with him, he locked his wife up in a mental ward because remember, she tried to drown herself because she is tired of her marriage. She wants a divorce. She was having an affair with JJ and she wants to move back to England. Only for him to be like, no, I worked too hard to get this family a home and out of the hostel and everything. And we have twin girls and we have this amazing home and like a boat and all kind of other crap. And like, I'm doing all this for the family. I'm not going back to England so we could be poor and everything. And she just couldn't deal with that. And then she just, tried to drown herself. So basically, he doesn't want nobody to visit her. And when JJ intervenes, he shows up only to get shoved by like JJ and stuff like that. When he is caught and doing it with like a dude, I thought for sure they was gonna blackmail him, but they didn't. That would have been the smartest thing. And so she's once again is all like, I want to go home. He's like, nope. And the girls ain't going with you. They staying with me. So he tells her, come by the house. I'll give you the key and I will give you your divorce and everything. And I saw this coming a mile away. So, Sheila, like I said before, she's been locked up in the mental institute for at least 2 episodes. JJ's been visiting her, and then with the help of like Peter, they help her like escape. And so she's been staying at the hostel, keeping a low profile. And so after all that stuff I told you with Bill, she goes to her house that, Bill got her. All happy and excited, thinking she's gonna get a divorce and she might get to stay with JJ or go back to England. And when I saw JJ stay at the hostel with his mom, I'm just kind of like, and Sheila went by herself. I'm like, oh, something's gonna happen. Either he's gonna trick her or like he took his life. Because of course, he doesn't want nobody to find out that he's bi. Because in England, if you are caught to be like gay or bi or whatever, you go to jail and then they give you these suppression pills that make your wee wee stay small so you can't get a hard on when you're around a guy. And I learned that from Call a Midwife that's set in the 1950s, 1960s and stuff. And so she goes to the house and there is Bill and here comes 2 cops. And he's all like, here's my wife and she escaped the mental institute. So they go to take her. She's like, no, he stole a bunch of money. And I talked to the guy who was his business partner that he stole the money from, framed him, and now he's in jail. And not only that, but he's in a relationship with a man. And he's all like, you see how delusional she is. She tried to drown herself. And that's why she needs to be locked back up. So the cops being cops, they arrest Sheila and take her to the mental ward. And nobody knows. And it ends just like that. I knew something like that was going to happen. She should have been smart enough to blackmail him or bring JJ with her. Speaking of which, I pretty much, mentioned all the stuff JJ does, so there's kind of really no point in rehashing that, but I'll just go by really quickly. He's helping out Peter be a man and everything. He also helps out Patty to get her kid away from that of Children and Family, or Children's Services, or whatever they're called. And of course, he helped break out Sheila. And it's funny because he keeps bribing the orderly at the front desk to like let him in and spend just 5 minutes with her. He really truly loves this woman a lot. And, the relationship with his mom has gotten a whole lot better. And also the relationship with the rest of the tenants that he takes care of. Ron. Ron is the only Aboriginal person in the show. That's a main character. And for the most part, this show only there was this one older Aboriginal woman from season one, but for whatever reason, she's not in season two. So she's been replaced by his younger cousin. And so I was kind of surprised by the storyline that he was given this season. First things first, him and Terry only have one scene together, and it's very, very brief. Now, those two are supposed to be business partners in that beach house that they're going to turn into a fish and chips place. But Terry has just completely abandoned that storyline and stuff. So that has left Ron to fix up the place himself. And I do wonder how he thought he was going to manage to make it work. Because I'm pretty sure his people aren't allowed to own businesses like that in that area of town. And without a white business partner, that's never gonna happen and stuff. But like I said before, Maggie saw him and his people sneaking out. Now, I'm not gonna get into the whole Maggie situation again because you always already heard that and stuff. But like when he is found out with Maggie, his cousin is not too pleased. And once again, I was very shocked to find out the benefits that he will lose and stuff like that, which caused the protest. At one point in time in the season, him and his people huddled around, and they were talking about staging a protest, talking about how this land was stolen from them, they want it back, and other stuff like that. Before that could happen, we do see an encounter with the police and Ron as he's driving his car. He's just driving in the middle of the night on the open road by himself. Some cops stop him and they all like get out the car and he's all like, did I do anything wrong? And they just start beating the crap out of him for no reason, talking about, you still think this your land, don't you? And that instantly reminded me of how black people were treated in like America around that same era of time, but mostly 1950s and stuff. No, of course, black people weren't the first nation of the North American continent. Native American people were, but I really have no idea how Native American people have been treated since they were put in reservations back in the day, because you never hear nothing from them. And most of the time, you don't even know who any Native American people are because a lot of them look white now. But black people took like a lot of the racial hate around that time. And of course, some Asian people did too, but it was mostly black people. And so that scene just reminded me of that. And because I remember, and I've told this story before, I was going to the beach with a friend of mine at night and we're going to meet up with another friend. And he was speeding like an idiot and the cops like pulled him over. And so the police officer was talking to him and I couldn't tell if it was male or female by the voice. So I just leaned my head over to look because it's night and you can't see it. Only for that cop to tell me, turn my head back around and do not look at me. And I'm thinking to myself, this is like the early 2000s. Why this fool talking to me like that for? But it just goes to show you there's still just some cops that got that hatred in them. And I've also told that other story the other story before, when I would just ride my bike around and like I pulled up at this church to get like a shortcut, and so there was this cop parked there of all places and asked me to come here. So I'm like, I came there, and the cops all like, hey, don't I know you? I'm like, no. And so I'm nosy, so I'm looking all in his car and I see his little computer laptop thing. And there he was looking for a black person who was like wanted. And I'm thinking, I know this little racist fool doesn't think all black people look the same, and why he asked me to come on over. Then there was that one time I was just riding my bike around on the left side of the road in just a neighborhood, not the street, just a neighborhood. And the cop literally stopped me. And it's all like, it's illegal to ride a vehicle on the left side of the road. I'm like, this is a bike and I'm just riding around for fun. And this is a neighborhood of all things. And I asked him straight up, why did you pull me over? And he copped the biggest attitude with me, talking about, I'm gonna pull you over, and blah, 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 blah. And the dude literally drove in front of me, turned the car sideways so he would block off the street. There are some racist cops in this stinking country. It's like, I don't get these people. This is why there's 8% of them left in the world. They're literally killing their own race because their race is tired of them and they're going to mess around with other races. So I totally know how Ron felt in this episode and stuff. So during the protest scene, they're just doing a peaceful protest, they're marching and everything, and here comes the cops, and the cops like tell them to go back home. They refuse, and they start beating the female protester who's Ron's cousin, talking about she's the ringleader and this and that. So Ron tries to intervene, and they beat the snot out of him. And I told you because of that, he now lost his benefits, and stuff like that because he was arrested. And when I was thinking about Ron and what he did this season, because he really didn't do much. I said this before. The first season crammed so much in, but then the second season it just took so much out. And through Ron's eyes, because he's the only Aboriginal person there other than that older lady in the first season, you really do get a glimpse a little bit of what their life was like and how they were treated back in the 1960s. And with that being said, we know he does like certain things that white people like eat and drink, like their beer, whatever kind of food that he was eating in the first season. And he tells Terry, I can never be seen eating this because I will get in trouble. I'm like, my God, you can't even eat their food and you'll get in trouble. And then like in season 1, we saw he had to drink his beer outside in the back of the bar because he wasn't allowed in the bar and stuff. And like, I'm glad they showed the protest stuff, but I really wanted them to amp up like what these people had to go through, and could there be a redeeming factor in one character of Dean? Dean got written out after the first season. Dean was that old racist man who ran over that Aborigine boy when he was drunk driving in the street at night. And the boy survived and everything, and Dean and Terry had a lot of conflict. And Ron beat the snot rockets out of Dean and everything. I think instead of Maggie, they should have replaced him with like Dean. Because Dean was such a hateful, nasty character. Like, they could have had Ron try to be all like, look, man, why you people hate us so much? And literally try to talk it to Dean to like turn him to like another leaf and everything. Let him see that his hatred and his prejudice, like, there should be no place for that and everything. And like, or at least have Ron like get with Dean's wife or something like that. Only for Dean to be all like, why are you messing around with him? Blah, 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 blah. And she's all like, because you're hateful and blah, blah, blah. And these are still human beings. Like, build on some type of storyline. You know what I'm saying? The Maggie thing just kind of came out of nowhere and stuff. Because Ron could have really, because he was part of that bridge between the racial hate, between like their two nations and stuff. And they could have really, really built on that. But not just having him get with some random character we never met before, Patty. I loved everything with Patty this season for the most part. I really liked how they handled her character. Why? Because they showed the risk of having a teen have underage sex and having a baby. Their life is pretty much ruined after that. And that's how we see Patty. She is constantly having to take care of her child. Yes, her mom does help out some, and her brother helps out whenever she just forces him to babysit. But for the most part, it is her having to walk around with the stroller all the time or the baby in her hand. The baby's crying all night, and this one guy in the hostel threatened her is all like, I'm tired of that baby crying at night. I have to get up at 7 in the morning for work. Like, she's having to, deal with her consequences and stuff. Don't have sex underage. And there's a reason why a lot of people, wait until they're married to like start doing it in case they have a baby and stuff. They would have somebody to help them out. Her baby father can't help her out because he doesn't even know he's a father. He's back home in England and he's black. Now, I have said before, I am kind of disappointed they didn't delve deeper into why all of a sudden she was into like, a black guy and stuff like that. Her parents are not hateful and not racist. When they did find out that the baby gonna be half black, they were a little disappointed only because they know she's gonna get scrutinized for that. But they're not racist people themselves because we saw Annie stick up for the Aborigine woman and we saw Terry did the same thing for an Aborigine man. And we saw Peter hangs out with Aborigine kids in season 1, so we know they're not racist and stuff. But I was always curious to know why she fancied a black dude or whatever, And it was kind of weird when she started liking Stevie, because you would think she would go for a dark-skinned dude, like maybe an Aborigine dude or something like that. But of course, Stevie was willing to be there for her and stuff. And so I already told you the thing when he tried to bleach the child's skin white, and then that caused problems between those two. But we do see every time her teenage friends want to have fun with her in the first couple of episodes, she can't go because she has to take care of baby. She's sad, it really upsets her, but Stevie's all like, nah, I'll see about the baby, you go have fun. And so I'm like, don't let her get away with it just like that. But then there was one episode, like I said before, the whole beauty pageant, not really a beauty pageant, but like a walkway type thing, a runway type thing, that's what it is. And so Marlene had that. And so Patty's just kind of like, like I shouldn't do this, I have the kid, but she's like, I'll watch it. And Patty actually got to have some fun, you know what I'm saying? She got to be a teen again, which is something she really wanted to be. So she's putting on this pretty dress. She's like walking down. They're like loving her. She's giving her speech about how smart she is and how she wants to go to college and all this other stuff until Marlene neglected the baby. And these women found the baby and the baby started crying. And she was very shocked and surprised, like, oh crap. Like, what I'm gonna do in her mind, because these people, she's over here like a teenager talking about she's smart and making good decisions, but then she made a bad decision by like having sex and everything and getting knocked up. And so like you just see this worried look on her face until she finally just has to confess it's hers, and she takes the baby and just runs on out of there, because she's so ashamed. Then there's that one scene before the skin bleaching thing. She was hanging out with some of her friends and her boob started leaking milk through her shirt, which one boy pointed out and started laughing and stuff. That completely embarrassed her that when she took off running, making matters worse, coming back to see powder all over her child's face. So she's had it rough and everything. This is a good lesson to teach young people. Keep your legs closed and keep your wee-wee in your pants. But then something scary almost happened. You see how upset and depressed she is. And one morning she decides to just go outside and go near a cliff with the baby. Annie wakes up and can't find her and starts looking for her only to see her by the cliffside. I thought she was going to throw her baby over the cliffside, but thankfully she did not. I still don't understand why they would set it up like that, but I guess they wanted to be very dramatic. And boy, that was dramatic. And everything, But then when Patty finds out something about Annie, she's completely pissed at her mom and just like tells her mom to go tell somebody about what she did, which causes a rift between them until Benny rats her out to children's services. And when that happens, I love how everybody in the hostel helped her out to hide the baby, and they literally had to hide the baby. One of her teenage friends from season one helped out to hide the baby. JJ helped, and then they hid out at that of like the beach house and everything. The whole family, and because the whole family, well, Annie and Terry was having problems. But just like Peter said, they can't stay there all night because the wind is blowing hard and a storm might come. So Terry has them stay at the apartment place that's like condemned, but they know they can't stay there forever. Then eventually they found themselves like a lawyer to help them out. And the ending was kind of interesting. They're in court and she has to give like her side of events of the mistakes she made and why she loves her child and how her family helps to take care of them and how the baby is loved and how she doesn't want her child to go into the foster system because we now know what the Australian government would do with the British child and everything. But who would really adopt like a half black baby, you know what I'm saying, in 1960 Australia? So the judge, hearing her plea and everything, tells her, you cannot keep the baby. It's just the law. I wish I could change it, but I can't. But what I can do, if your parents agree to this, your parents can adopt the baby as their own and raise her as their own child, and you will have to be known as like the sister. So it ends just like that. And we don't know what the parents' decision was. The parents are going through a rough time, but we know they love Patty and they love little baby Mary. So most likely, if season three were to happen, they would do that. And yeah, but like I said before, I really do like the stuff with like Patty because they show the consequences of what happens when you have underage, unprotected sex and everything. Kate. The Kate actress is interesting. When I was reading up on the show getting canceled, this and that, something struck me. It's like I forget the actress name, but they're all like, the actress show just got canceled and stuff like that. I'm like, she's not the main character of the show, is she? Can't be. I'm pretty sure the family, Terry's family, is like the main like cast members of the show because a lot of storylines revolve around them. Yes, Kate does have a big storyline and everything, but I'm almost positive the show started with like Terry's family and stuff. And then I noticed on Wikipedia her name is listed first, and in the opening credits of like the show, the intro, her name is listed first. And I'm just like, is this her show? So I'm like, what the heck is going on? I'm like, well, maybe she's the most famous out of everybody on that show. Well, no, there were other people famous on there too. Like, JJ's mother is very famous and stuff, has been in multiple projects. Um, the Annie actress, she was in The White Queen, she was in Andor, the Terry actor was in Luther and everything. But however, the Kate actress was in Coronation Street. I think that's like an Australian or New Zealand, soap opera, and she was in there for like over 800 episodes, I believe. So that could be why, people focus more on her when it comes to the credits of like this show. Anyways, so we see her where she left off last season when she kidnapped her son Michael after finding him and tricking the foster parents and stuff like that. And Michael's just more than happy to like go along with her, play with her, hang out with her and stuff like that. But I don't think he knows that's his mom still. He still thinks she's like, what's them people call when they check up on a child? I forget. but he thinks she's like one of them. But anyway, so we see her very early on trying to get on a boat to head back to England, and she even stole a woman's luggage that had like the papers to like depart and everything. Only for the lady to contact the police and is looking for her bag. So now Kate is screwed, heads back in her little station wagon van type thing, a party wagon van, what do you call it, and just starts driving and driving. Her son is feeling like, homesick. He misses his foster parents and everything, and starting to write them like a letter. But this dude is just willing to go wherever she wants to go and everything. Realizing that she has no more options and she's never going to be able to make it to New Zealand, she calls Annie to call the foster parents and arrange a meeting so she can hash it out mother to mother. And so she talks to like the adoptive mother and everything, and tells them, what happened and everything, and how you and your husband paid a lot of money, to speed up the immigration cycle faster to get Michael and stuff, and how the church stole him and all this other stuff. And so the foster mothers all like, or adoptive mothers all like, all right, look, we can set some things up where you can come and visit and blah, 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 blah. And every once in a while, me and him play in the park and you can come and just observe and stuff like that. So they had an understanding. I'm all like, that happened a little too nice. So when Kate showed up at the park, and I'm all like, oh wow, there's the adoptive like mother and Michael, and but then slowly here comes the police, and Kate is now arrested for kidnapping. The adoptive mother just totally screwed her over. I'm all like, I knew that was gonna happen. That happened way too early in the season, and things were just going too nicely for her. So we do get to see Kate in like jail, and she's upset. She's talking to like a lawyer. He's trying his best to like help her and stuff. And then in comes Robbie. And I forget how he found out she was in jail, but he pretended to be her fiance. And the deal is, if she promises to stay as far away from Michael, to have like a restraining order on her, and not to be within like 100 feet, and give up all her rights to him and everything, and never interact with him unless of course he's like an adult and wants to, she would have to obey by that, and also be married and blah 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 blah, stuff like that, and just leave the boy alone. She does not want to do that. This is a woman who desperately wants her child, who was just like taken from her and lied to her and everything. Her actual real fiance from season 1, he is now written out of the show. And I thought those two were gonna reconnect, but they never did, because this is the way it seemed from season 1. But anyway, so one of like the police officers who's like guarding her cells all like, look, you got this man. He's willing to marry you. He's Australian. You're here all by yourself, and you're not allowed to be with your son. You can either rot away in this jail cell or sign those papers. So heartbroken, she has to sign those papers. But she's not done yet. She's determined to get her son back by exposing the Australian government, the England government, and the Catholic Church. So she pretends to go to this newspaper organization, pretend to be from this really famous newspaper organization. But then she confesses, she just lied, and the dude wants her to leave. But she tells her side of the story to him and his assistant. And she's telling him, like, look, they're kidnapping these kids. They're bringing them over here. They're giving them different names. And the Catholic Church and the government, all this, they all know about that. And he's all like, I understand what you're going through. Well, he doesn't understand what she's going through, but he feels sorry about what she's going through. But she needs proof and everything. And so he said he can't run that article without no proof. So the assistant later tracks her down. Is all like, look, I do a little investigative like journalism myself and everything, and I write, and I can help get your story out there. Just let me make some phone calls and stuff. So that's exactly what she does. She starts making phone calls, and she starts making phone calls to immigration, asking a bunch of questions and stuff to where Robbie works at. Now, by this time, Robbie really has a thing for Kate. And he's hanging out with her, taking her all these places, trying to take her mind off Michael and everything. And like, he takes her to this like non-Christmas party where she meets his boss. And when she finds out he's the head of immigration and he's drunk, she starts pressing him for questions, and he can feel something weird is going on. Why are you asking me these questions? But he starts to tell her some stuff because he's drunk, but then he later stops. Next day, when Robbie's at work, he tells Robbie, call up your little pretend married wife lady and everything. And he's all like, what's really interesting? What's really interesting is that your little pretend wife over here started asking me a bunch of funny questions. What's even more interesting, I get this news journalist lady asking me the same questions. What's even more funny is a couple of months, these immigration papers on this one boy went missing. The same boy who, this woman started asking me about. And I think y'all got something to do with that. And he just straight up fires Robbie. Robbie's pissed at Kate, but then forgives her by the next episode. And then this is when they start kind of like dating a little bit more, but he jumps the gun and asks her to marry him and everything. And I'm just like, he barely knows this woman. He's barely appeared on the show, and he's asking her to marry him for real life. But of course, she turns him down. But then later, when she goes to his family home and see he's loaded, then all of a sudden she decides, okay, she'll marry him. But then it's like, the whole Mandy thing happened, and I already told you about that. And so I'm just kind of like, okay, Kate is a good woman. And she really, really wants her son back and everything. But she's been using Robbie since season one. And the dude really likes her, but she's just been using him this entire time, even using him to get out of jail and everything. And I'm just like, she has no business being pissed at him for using Mandy for sex and everything. And having a potential child that might be his, but it really not because there's no child. So then when we see her back at the hostel, the adoptive father comes to visit her and is all like, look, I want you out our hair. I'm going to pay you tons of money, even rent money to go back to England, and you leave Sydney, Australia. And she's all like, you are not going to pay me off for me not to be able to see my son or have my son. And she's all like, no amount of money in the world would cause me to do this. And I love that. The fact of the matter that like, she would not be bribed off. Like, she loves her son. That's why she traveled all the way to Australia just to get him back. And she is going to eventually try to get him back. But that whole storyline has now been sidelined because of the whole Robbie's storyline. Because one of the things she told him when she was mad about the Mandy thing was all like, I was trying to start over a new life with you and possibly have kids and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, but you don't like him. But at the end, they kiss, and then that's the end of their story. Terry, I can't believe how they assassinated this dude's character. The things they have him do this season is just unbelievable. He is still like a handyman. He's fixing up these apartments and stuff, right? And he's trying to help the locals who live there, like this Italian family, which causes him to work for Benny. Benny has him do things I just can't believe. And this doesn't sound like Terry whatsoever. It sounds more like a Bill type thing. But Benny has Terry pick up this like really attractive younger woman and bring her to this party. The same party Terry's at. And this woman is seducing the mayor. and they're being recorded with audio and everything. So Benny has Terry literally give the mayor this recording and be all like, look, do as Benny wants you to, and this won't get leaked to the public. I'm like, dude, you're blackmailing, coercing this man and everything. Like, who are you at this point? Then he starts having Terry be kind of like a bodyguard and stuff like that, and wants them to evict like families from like the apartment complex and stuff. I can't believe it. Now, Terry also starts to play kind of husband father to another family. Now, I told you before, he does irritate him when he sees JJ hanging out with his son. And when he sees that happen, he keeps going back to this family. But then, it's raining. All of a sudden, just started pouring. Anyway, but he started playing family or husband or wife to this family, house to this family, before he found out about his son and JJ. Christine, I believe, is like an Australian woman with 2 kids. Don't know whatever happened to her husband, but she lives in these condemned apartments. And I started getting the feeling he likes her. And one of the times he tells them, what do you kids like to do for fun? I'll be like going to the beach or blah, 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 blah. So he takes them to the beach. Don't take his family to the beach, but he takes this woman and her family to the beach. The kids are hanging out. He's talking to her, and she starts to give him the look. I'm like, please don't have an affair. Please don't cheat on Annie, and go back to your family, man. You got 2 kids and a granddaughter. And so he's constantly spending so much time with her that it irritates that of Annie and everything. And so even she can see what's going on. And so, but nothing happened between him and Christine. Thank God for that. And so, but you can tell the writers were going in that direction and stuff. But they do have Terry also try to redeem himself by being a hero to that of Christine and her family. There was like a gas leak from the stove, and the family was incapacitated, but the daughter was very, very ill and had to be rushed to the hospital. So he saved them and everything. This is what causes him to turn on Benny. But every time he turns on Benny and starts beating Benny up or stealing from Benny is because of Christine, and then later Patty and stuff. He is a good man and he is a noble man, but the fact that they have him playing house husband, like father to a completely different like family, when his family is starting to be in shambles, is messed up. Then when he finds out about Annie, I can't believe what they did to her. Annie, I can't believe how they assassinated her character and stuff. So, I've already told you how, she started working with, Marlene and stuff and helping her business out and becoming basically like a little business partner, hoping to run the place. And the thing I've always liked about Annie is she's always a go-getter. They really to show that, she's determined to change her life around, her family life around, and be like a working class type woman, you know what I'm saying? And so when she modeled in a bikini for a commercial for everybody to see, Terry was not happy whatsoever. Wearing a 2-piece bikini was very uncommon around that time, but she wanted to usher that in. Another thing her and the other women wanted to do was to have more rights for women. They talked about how during the war, it really changed them because of course the men were all fighting the war, and the women, they were back home having to work the jobs that men did, and it gave them a sense of independence. So she started hanging out with this women's group, and they really wanted to do this women's type revolution, right? And so they decided they're going to go to a bar and have a drink. And the men's all like, why are you women in our bar? Y'all know y'all not supposed to be here and stuff. And so they're like, well, we want a whiskey and everything. So some of the men there started harassing them, and one man legit just grabbed Annie's butt and smacked it and stuff. And I mean, they actually showed him smacking the butt, not the camera moving up and you not knowing what's happening. They showed that mess. Then they started threatening the women and stuff and intimidating them. And so, like, this one guy's all like, we don't want y'all leaving out the front door. It might give other women ideas. So y'all leave out the back. So they tricked the women and stuffed them in the storage room. And you literally feel the fear and the tension thinking those men are going to harm those women. But they told them, we'll let you leave when you call your husbands and tell them where you've been. So that's what happens. And Annie gets in trouble with that of Terry and everything, because he doesn't want his wife in no bar, this and that. Now, Terry has been one reason why Terry's been working for Benny is to get his family out the hostel and into a nicer house. That is his goal, and that's why he took that job, doing all that crooked stuff. And so, Annie, of course, tried to help Marlene get some more business partners to take on the business and be partners and stuff, these group of men, but they had no interest in helping a woman out. But what really, really stung and how they assassinated her character was to find out she had an affair on Terry back in the day. So all throughout this season, we've been seeing flashbacks of her dressed. I don't know how she's dressed. Like, where are women dressed like this? And working in like a bakery with this man, and that's all we see. Flashbacks of her kneading the dough and stuff like that, along with this man, not knowing really who he is, until she got a letter from her mother saying that this man is dying and everything. And so with that, in these flashbacks, it doesn't take a genius to find out what she did. So she confessed to Kate that when Terry was off in the war and everything, she got a letter saying that Terry was dead and they didn't know where his body was. And so she was heartbroken because of that. This man comforted her and helped take care of her and Patty and stuff. And they started having an affair. Now, they tried to justify it by saying she didn't know Terry was alive. And she was devastated and she had needs. But it didn't take long for her to get a new letter and determine that Terry is alive. And I think the affair happened for I don't know, maybe 45 days or some crap like that, right? And so, in one of the scenes when she's talking to the dude baking and everything, she's all I can't believe we had unprotected sex. Like, how could we be foolish? I'm thinking, no, don't go there. Do not go there. Please let those kids be Terry's, you know what I'm saying? And so, and this affair was a major affair to the point where the man would come and spend the night after doing her and making sure Patty wouldn't see nothing and stuff. She went all out on this affair. And what hurts is that she cheated on Terry. And yes, Terry had a drinking problem after the war, had PTSD and stuff like that. But that's because of what happened in the war. But he's always been a good man. And not only that, but in season 1, she was this one man was attracted to her, and you think she's gonna have an affair, but she turned him down. But she was tempted. I'm all like, that's great. She was tempted, but she didn't go through with it, only to find out that something prior happened to that. I'm all like, why would you do that and stuff? So as she's telling Kate this, Patty overhears in the window, and she is pissed and just treating her mom like crap. And so when her mom was hanging out with Marlene and Patty was at that bar smoking weed and everything, she tells her mom she overheard her telling Kate in front of Marlene. So now Marlene knows and stuff. Her mom is devastated, but what happens after that is even more messed up. Patty, well, not so much messed up, but kinda. So Patty moves out their parents' place and go lives with this teenage girl and her parents. And her mom's like, you need to come back and blah blah. She's like, well, you need to tell dad that you cheated on him and stuff. And then she'll come home and everything and forgive her. And talking about, and all this other crap. So when Terry and that of Annie was hanging out with Robbie and Kate by the countryside and going to this fancy hotel and this and that, and gonna have dinner at Robbie's parents' place, after doing it and whatnot and all this other crap that happened, she finally reveals to Terry what happened when they started making out outside at night. Terry is beside himself and can't believe this. He's like, why? Why would you tell me this? You know my mind is messed up from the war. I've literally killed people. I have PTSD. I had a drinking problem and stuff. Like, why would you tell me this now? And she's all like, because Patty found out and told me to tell you. And here's my thing about Patty. Yes, Annie should have told Terry. And I understand why Patty wanted her to. That's her dad. She loves him, this and that. Her mom did a terrible thing. But Patty got pregnant as a teenager, did not tell nobody, kept the pregnancy an entire secret until the baby popped out and had a baby with a black dude, which was forbidden at that time. So Patty's not really in the position to force her mom to tell anything. But I do agree Annie should have told Terry. And Terry wanted to know who this dude was, and when she tells him, Terry's pissed because he knows who that man is, calling him a yellow belly coward of all things because the man dodged the draft. And Terry's all like, I fought for our country, I fought for you, and this man hid and cowered and dodged the draft and everything. He's a coward and you messed around with him and stuff. And so Terry wants nothing to do with her. He gets drunk that night. And then he takes a train back home, only for Annie to head back on the train herself and stuff like that. And of course, because of plot armor, they just happen to be on the train at the same time. And he walks up to her and he's just literally like, are they mine? And he's all like, it's Patty's mine. And more importantly, it's Peter mine, because I look at Peter and I don't see myself in him. And she just says straight up, of course they're yours. How did she know? And why would the writers set up that line of her talking about we didn't use protection? Like, they was literally planting the seeds. And I truly believe if they would have got a third season, it probably would have been season revealed 2 was a good live thing. But it was too much like a soap opera. And it just started taking the show in directions I was just not ready for them to go in and everything. Something like those type of storylines should have waited until much later. Like Terry going to work for like a mobster type dude. Like, where did that come from? Seriously, I get it. He wanted a nice house. But to do all that, they literally gave him Bill's storyline from season 1. And I guess because Bill was barely in season 2. And a lot of characters feel like they just wasn't in season 2. And it's weird because it's like so much happened in season 1 with the same amount of episodes in season 2, but yet so little happened in season 2. I really wish they could have explored the whole race dynamic a whole lot more. I really wish we could have learned more about what it was like in Australia in the 1960s and everything. And, because it's just fascinating to learn this stuff, Like, it's really, really just fast. They should have had more Aborigine people this season. They should have had more storylines with them. But this season was very, very, very rushed and everything. Like, how do you go from Kate trying to get her son back, then later trying to start a new life with this like rich man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like to completely abandon that storyline was just kind of just weird, you know what I'm saying? And the whole Sheila thing was barely non-existent. It makes me wonder, did they take on other project roles and stuff? Could that what delayed season two so much? Because a lot of time passed, and a lot of these stars went on to other projects and everything. Like the actress who played Kate, she went on to two other shows where she was a main star on them, and one of them is about to come out soon, where she plays like a detective or something like that. So, all in all, people should watch this show. Like, if you haven't already, because it's just fascinating and stuff. And this could have been one of those great shows that could have lasted season after season. They just rushed that second storyline and brought in too much romance and gangster stuff. Also, shows like this are supposed to teach people how not to act, how not to repeat the mistakes of the past and like their ancestors and stuff, you know? Like, and that's what's the great thing about this show. And it's like, you know, the racial divide is supposed to show people, hey, this was horrible. Don't do it again. You know, and it's just like there are so many countries, and especially mine, that are remaking this same mistake, going back to their old racist ways and stuff. Like, my God, like back in like really, really ancient time of slave owner days, slave owners used to eat their black slaves. I'm not even kidding. Like, there were some that actually did. Like, what goes through a person's mind that wants to go around and eating another person who happens to be your slave or having a slave, period? And I don't understand what's going on in some countries, especially like mine, to where it's like white men are trying to recapture the power that they lost centuries and decades ago. Because, like, when you go back and you look at your history, or you watch a show like this and you see things that are happening, why on earth would other people allow them to regain like their power? Like, you saw like after World War II, you would think things would change after what Germany tried to do and have like the superior race and everything. But then yet after the war, people of color who fought in the war were still treated like crap. It's like their service meant nothing. Then there are women who, during the war, you know, worked the jobs that men had. So you think afterwards they will be able to keep those jobs, but no, they were still treated like, you know, second rate citizens and stuff. It's like all that meant nothing just for like a white man to come back and reclaim what he had and everything. Like I don't get that. I really don't get that thinking, and it happened in so many countries after the war. But then, like I said before, I did notice around like 1970s and 80s, a lot of countries started to fall in line and act better and stuff. But there are still those countries that are repeating the steps and the mistakes that they made many decades and centuries ago. And as a society, as a whole, people have to do better. And there are shows like this that are supposed to teach people, hey, do not make those same mistakes. But of course, there are those that feel guilty and don't want to hear about it. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.